the
And that
process.
comes into acquisitions as well. Because we are a private collection that has a publicly, like we're a private collection. We have a museum space that's publicly accessible. But when we're making acquisitions, it's a conversation I have with my collector, Bob Rennie. It's like, okay, so but where is this going to fit? How we can't get it through the big museum doors, or it's so heavy. Our floors can't take it. Are you sure you want to acquire this work, even though we don't have the capacity
Yes. Hello?
at this point to show it if we remain in this building?
Yes. As interesting as it is, it looks like we're 6 minutes past time. So I think we can start the conversation now. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Kwesi Selassie. I'm actually the founder and creator of Sankofa program. Just a little bit about Sankofa. Sankofa is a program intended to help people of color who are looking to either transition into new roles or actually in school and are looking to essentially find out about what opportunities exist out there. We have some amazing panelists today. Starting from my left, Assad, who is working as one of the finance folks in City. I'm just really dumbing it down, and I'll still give you guys a chance to elaborate on what you actually do within City. Then we have Mary-Kate, who actually has a background as an art curator. She also works in City. And then we have Wendy, who is like a big shot guru who knows all about art and has a ton of experience. So we're going to start. Yes, I know. I saw Wendy. I saw that. So with that being said, with that being said, how the session is going to happen is um, I'll be moderating the event. I'll start off with a few questions to the panelists. The panelists will go into their backgrounds, how they even started off, how they got into the arts world, what they currently do, and then we'll eventually merge down into the weeds of the whole conversation. Essentially, what matters to you guys? What are the opportunities out there? If you are already having an experience or background today, how do you transition into the arts world if that's where you want to be? What are some of the skill sets that you need to be really looking into? And are there any jobs or opportunities out there? How do you network your way in there? And then maybe even look at some of the new advents like NFT and crypto and all that's happening out there as well. All right. So that's basically the nutshell of how the session is going to go. And now I would start and by getting the folks to introduce themselves. Let's start with Wendy. Wendy, do you want to give us a brief introduction about yourself and just tell us who you are, what you currently do, and what you've done over the past couple of years? Just a brief summary before we actually get into the details.
Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm Wendy Chang. I am director of Rennie Collection, which is a private contemporary collection based in Vancouver, Canada. We also operate a museum space. It's 100% privately funded by my collector, Bob Rennie, but it's entirely open, free to the public. All of our museum programs are provided for free. So I personally did not start off studying art. I completed first year university. I was studying English lit and psychology. I was pursuing my passion with no idea of what practical use I was going to get out of that piece of paper when I achieved it. And I didn't know I was going to feed myself. But independent art dealer who needed some administrative help. And it's one of those things where as a student, you're taking on a part-time job. To me, it was more interesting than working at Starbucks. That kind of, it's a really strange animal for me. The artworks, it had the typical response of that's art, and and that's how much, and that sort of thing. But there was something about particularly conceptual contemporary art which has a meaning to it. It's not just specifically to how well that painting is executed. All of that can come into play. But that led me down a path of being really intrigued and essentially taking on any opportunity I encountered when it came to working in art, working in the dealer I was sort of assisting wanted to start a company, and so it was just the two of us. And the great thing about something like that is when you start a business and it's a small enterprise, you do everything. And from there, that led to 15 years of managing a projects with artists, and then opening a gallery in Los Angeles representing both highly established artists and emerging artists. And that, of course, allowed me to develop through all those years. Eventually, I accepted a position as director of Rennie Collection because I'm actually originally from Vancouver as well. So that really, on a personal level, worked well for me. But I think I'm hoping to contribute to today's conversation, this idea that you don't have to have started in art. You don't even have to have an awareness art exists in the world. I had no idea. At this point, I've been in the experiences and the opportunities and the path and the career options that there were. And so I do hope to share some insight that will make art a potentially interesting and viable industry for you guys to explore.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Mary-Kate, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Mary-Kate Ohare. I am currently an advisor with City Private Bank's Art Advisory and Finance team. I've been with City just about coming on 9 years now. And I'll explain what I do, but like Wendy, I'll explain how I got here, because I have to admit, I never would have thought I would be working for a bank, actually, and how it connects with art is kind of unusual. I'm also maybe a little bit unusual in that I knew from the time I was like in 8th grade that I wanted to do something in art. I just loved looking at art. I loved studying it. I wanted to know the secrets behind all the paintings. And so I remember asking a teacher and be like, how do you figure out the secrets of the work, of the artworks? And she said, you study art history. And I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. So I was pretty focused on that from an early age. And I went to school and started working on my master's thesis, a master's degree at Rutgers University. And then, to be honest, I got really burnt out because grad school is really hard. And I thought I wanted to teach, and then I started to think maybe that's not what I want to do. So I ended up taking a break. I just, kind of like Wendy, I just happened upon a part-time summer job in a small local museum, and the director's executive assistant was on maternity leave during the summer, and I got this job helping him, and I just fell in love with the museum. We did all kinds of things. We were putting up exhibitions. We ran a film series, and I got involved in all the logistics of how you even order. We kind of did everything. And during that period, one of the exhibitions we put up was devoted to contemporary New Jersey artists. I'm still living in New Jersey, actually, and this museum is in New Jersey. And the museum was expanding at that time and hired a new director of collections and exhibitions, a woman named Suzanne, who were part of the story networks. And Suzanne could hire somebody. And I was like, I didn't want to go back to grad school. I needed a break. Suzanne needed somebody to help her. And I was like, I'll do it. So I worked at this museum for about almost 3 years. I learned how to unpack artworks. I learned how to hang artworks. I was literally making the actual labels that went on the wall because this was a really small museum. But like Wendy was saying, sometimes these small places, though, you get to experience so many different things. And it just showed me that I really love to work with objects. I will never forget, it still gives me goosebumps when I think about it. We took a whole exhibition of the sculptor Auguste Rodin's work, and I had to unpack it. And I was there with these artworks just alone and thinking, I feel so privileged to do this, and I want to do this for the rest of my life. And so that got me focused why I wanted to be in grad school. I knew to be a curator, most people were getting PhDs, and so I had a real focus, and that helped. And so I went back to school, and then I ended up during that time joining the Newark Museum, where I worked for 13 years. Ultimately, I started as a research associate cataloging paintings, and ended up as the head of the American Art Department, where I was overseeing our collection of contemporary American art, modern American and 19th century art. And I had the opportunity to do a lot of like amazing projects while I was there and doing a lot of research. But, especially organizing exhibitions, it's a really complicated process that forces you to be a really good consensus builder, because you're overseeing a team, and you need your team to be all working together to achieve a show. You need really good networking skills, because, you need to know how to find the artworks you need to borrow. You need to be, a scholar. You need to be able to come up with a thesis and be a good writer. You need to be a marketer, a fundraiser. So I realized I enjoyed this job because it allowed me to pull on all these different kind of skill sets, or I discovered I had certain skill sets like doing it. And so then if we jump forward, during this whole time I was at the museum, and I still maintained my contact and friendship with Assad Chaudry, who was the woman who had hired me at the Morris Museum. Now, Suzanne had left the Morris Museum and had joined City Private Bank and was working as a business manager of the art team. And so Suzanne worked her way through City and ultimately became the head, and she still is the head of art advisory. And so she was looking for an advisor, and we talked about the job. And it was a little intimidating to me, I have to admit, at first, because I was like, who am I to tell people what artwork to buy? And she was like, oh, come on, you can do this and apply the skills of a curator to working as an art advisor. And so in this job, we, as an advisor for City, we help clients of the bank build their art collections. So basically now I'm working like as a private curator, so with individuals and helping them figure out what it is they want to buy, what's the best way to find it, negotiate for them, help them figure out, what's the right price. So we're navigating the art market with them. And the other side of what we do at City Art Advisory is help collectors who already have art collections that are established to use those art collections as collateral for art lending purposes. So I'll be honest with you, before I got this job, I had absolutely no idea that this even existed, that people could use art as collateral. And one of the interesting things is in North America, a collector can actually keep the artwork on the walls of their home or their office. And maybe Assad can also explain how that actually works. But so you'd have no idea that these artworks are actually being used by the collector for another financial end. And one of the things that's happened over the past especially 20 years is that the art market has gotten so strong, and that the values, especially in contemporary art, have risen so high that artworks that collectors may have bought, that were expensive, have gained in value so much, and then they become part of a larger sort of financial plan for clients about how they can maximize the value that is grown in these artworks for a broader kind of portfolio plan in their financial planning. So it's a really interesting job. I get to meet a lot of interesting people and work with a lot of different colleagues in all different parts of the bank. And so we can talk more about that. But I've talked a lot. So anyway, that's my basic story.
Okay. Assad, your turn. Hello?
Of course, yeah.
Oh, can you
You
hear
may
me?
have kind of referred to me, but I'm not sure I can hear you.
Oh, can
But
you hear me now?
I can, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Your turn now. Please go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. So Kwesi introduced me as the finance guy. So it's it's I don't think I'll have such a great story as Mary-Kate and Wendy, but I'll try giving my best on my background and how I got here. So I actually started off in London. I had no idea what I wanted to do straight out of university, quite frankly. Every job that I've ever had, and this is just the honest truth, has been a referral or somebody told me, hey, try this. And it goes throughout my career. I started off in London at the UK regulators. 6 months in, a friend of mine who worked at Citi told me there's an opportunity in risk management there. So thought I'd give it a try. Went on a rotational program at Citi. Eventually ended up on the trading floor for around 4 years. Again, wanted to try something a little different. I've been in multiple functions throughout Citi, worked in a lot of different locations, South Africa, worked in Argentina, Brazil, Singapore, Hong Kong. That's the only comparison I have in terms of trying to equate my kind of career to Mary-Kate's and Wendy's in terms of how interesting it is. But eventually I ended up in a function which effectively reviews all the businesses at Citi that we have. And it's funny, kind of Mary-Kate mentioned it and Wendy mentioned it in terms of maintaining our contacts. Through that, I actually reviewed the private bank as a business. And I was kind of speaking to like all the leads and telling them everything they were, well, in my opinion, what I thought needed to be improved and whatnot. And then when an opening came up, I got approached to becoming an underwriter in the team. And the best piece of advice, I always try to offer people is, careers are made through a combination of hard work, putting yourself in a certain position, and a certain amount of luck. I mean, that's the way it really works. My luck was that I put myself in a position, worked as hard as I could, and then my manager retired earlier this year. And so they approached me to kind of taking the position. So now, effectively, I'm the North America head of underwriting for the structured products team, which is a bit of a mouthful. But basically, effectively, I head up the underwriting function. We have a team of 14 people right now, and they work on various aspects: aircraft financing, a bit of unsecured lending, lending against hedge fund, private equity, and a big component of that, is lending against art.
Interesting.
Now, Mary-Kate kind of spoke about that a little bit with respect to, how clients can monetize their art, right? There's various pieces of art in which clients may perceive may increase in value over time. So the question is always, why would a client sell that when they can use that as a financing tool? The easiest way to understand it is going back to the most simple form of lending, which is residential mortgages. And it works exactly the same way. You have a hard asset that you are able to value, and Mary-Kate is the expert in that field. Now, when that house value or the art value increases over time, you are able to monetize that through a loan. That's effectively the way it kind of works. Now, there's a lot more kind of complexity to it in terms of loan documents and structure, but that's not important. The two key elements in the finance world is how much am I willing to lend and how am I going to get repaid? That's really it. And if you can wrap your head around all those concepts with respect to a client's financial and, as Mary-Kate put it, the collateral that we hold, which in this case would be art, this is a job that you can do.
Awesome.
We have folks. I came from a completely different background. I knew nothing about lending, absolutely nothing. But I came into space using those key factors. You're able to do the job. Now, my background is, I had a master's in mathematics, so analytical background, but we have folks who don't have an analytical background. But again, credit is very intuitive per se. As I mentioned, there's two key factors. There are careers for absolutely everyone within this space. Here we're focused on art financing and other areas like that, but there are multiple areas, and we can touch upon that later on. But
Okay.
I will leave it there.
No, that's a really good segue into this, and I think some of the questions that heading to the next session will be, so let's say I am a student, or let's say I'm currently having a job, right? Let's say I'm a business analyst, or maybe I'm a teacher. I am curious about what I actually need to do to maybe take a step. Where do I start from? What do I have to do?
In terms of getting into the art field in the
Yes.
broader art market, I
Yes.
see. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I can just start just a few ideas because I think that I come out of it as a curator, but the reality is that whether you're working for a museum or you're working for a bank or you're working for a gallery or all these there's so many different institutions that actually constitute the art world and the art market and all of those, that there are so many other skill sets that are required outside of just curatorial. So for example, I think about this, again, museum world, just for example, you have a whole finance department, you have controllers, you have project managers, you have people who are, marketers. So if you have a marketing background, if you like to write, there's places for you like within that setup. There's shops and restaurants, so managing and overseeing, running those businesses within the museum. Just again to use that example of the museum, there's really good fits, and I often think that like museums and some of the galleries around the world are so big. They're running they're major corporations really across, and global corporations around the world, that there's so many different places for people with different and finance background and training, and these organizations need people with that background. So it's a nice way. So I don't think if art is something that's of interest and you think, oh, but I'm not, I was an art history major or anything like that. I mean, like Wendy's example. But you also, you don't necessarily need that to be able to work for an art, something of an organization within the art world. So you can have a passion for it, but you don't necessarily have to have a specialty in it. You can apply your specialties in many ways within the organizations.
Okay. Wendy, Assad, do you guys want to add something to that?
I think like Mary-Kate just gave some really good content there, but I think the thing is that if you have some kind of a loose interest in art, if you're studying law, like there are legal departments to many institutions. If you're interested in product marketing, are you interested in marketing a piece of clothing like fashion versus visual art? And to what Mary-Kate says, Tate, which is the preeminent UK museum, one of the most important museums around the world, they have Tate Enterprise, where they literally have a separate business that is a profit generating thing, where they have marketing experts and they have like buyers and that sort of thing. So if you have a sort of even a loose interest in visual art, I encourage, I think one of the nicest things to do is to start getting involved with your local museums. Join the junior collector group and everything, because it helps you start to understand some of the language that's used in the art field.
Okay.
And in going through that, not only will you be getting essentially a free education on art, but also you'll get exposed to all the other departments that it involves what art world and art market is. And as you get more engaged, like not just showing up, attending the openings, but essentially talking to your other museum committee members, and who are all from different professional backgrounds, you start to understand why people are drawn to art. You start to understand why you're like, oh, this fellow person also sits on a committee on a museum board, and because they're able to offer this aspect of their professional knowledge, whether it's in management, whether it's in legal, whatever it is. And so you start to understand that it's a really large, complex, and diverse group of professional knowledge that actually creates a well-functioning art institution, whether it's a commercial gallery or a public museum, or an art institution, like an educational institution. And one practical suggestion I have is literally go to some of the biggest art gallery, like commercial art galleries websites, like David Zorner, maybe not so much Gagosian, but Hauser and Wirth. And then I'm speaking from a contemporary art point because that's my specialty. And a lot of them actually they have a job section. And if you go to David Zorner right now, they have locations, they have gallery locations in New York, Hong Kong, London. But if you click on the job section, you will see, and you'll be surprised by the kind of job listing. It's not just, they have something right now for an art handler, obviously, but they have like communications and marketing manager. They're looking for a platform, a product designer for their web properties. A lot of these big commercial galleries have publishing arms. So you will be surprised by the diversity of available jobs listed on their website. It's not just curator. It's not just art sales. It's really encompasses a number of different skill sets and industries. And that will help you start to realize when you're dealing with some of the bigger organizations in art, that it is a really diverse field of background that is brought into it.
Okay. Assad, you want to add something?
I'm the boring finance guy, so maybe I'll add a little element of the finance element in here, in that, there are many people who don't have the, economics, finance, mathematics, quantitative background, but it does not mean you can't be in a finance industry. Lately, I shouldn't be saying this on this call with my colleague Mary-Kate, but yes, I've been approached by fintech companies as well to kind of join their organization, right? It's not traditional banking. It really can spread across a lot of new avenues. And I know maybe later on we'll be kind of speaking about crypto and so forth. I can kind of offer my views a little bit there, but the advice that I would offer is kind of come from my experience, which was I had 3 different internships before, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I joined various rotational programs at Citi. I did 2 rotational programs as well. So the amount of roles that I have, it's probably like 15. And I've only been at Citi for 12 years. And all those rotational programs were 3 months, 6 months here and there. So it's okay to explore it. It's okay to reach out to, I'm on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to reach out through there, feel free to drop me a message and we can speak further on kind of your specific career ambitions and so forth. And if you have an interest in finance, I can connect you to multiple people in the industry, whether it be at Citi or outside a different institution. I'm not one of those guys who say, no, only Citi and only Citi only, right? It's about your career and what you guys want to do and what you want to achieve.
Okay. So this actually came into mind. So I come from a language background, and I know some people here who also speak multiple languages. Assuming they wanted to get in there somehow, what should they hone on? Like, what if I'm interviewing and I say, oh yeah, I speak maybe 3 or 4 languages, how do I bring that up in the conversation in a subtle way so that it kind of elevates my skill set?
Wow, I'm trying to think of a way to. Sorry, Mary, go ahead.
Oh no, well I was just thinking, it's like creative ways like to get information about yourself across, and also showing that you're really thoughtful, right? Like I'm just thinking strategically. I think one thing you could say, like if it's a bank or a big gallery or things like that, is ask about, we're in a global world right now, obviously, like, and just, you know, you can also ask, like, I'm curious about, like, your connections across the globe, and, like, do you have people based in other areas? And you can say, you could be like, you know, because I have this experience and I speak these languages. And, you know, I think that there's could be like a way that shows that curiosity and you're curious about like a place that you're interviewing, because I think that's really important to always make sure that you're bringing questions like in an interview process, but you can also showcase like, you know, your particular skill set, what also sets you apart, which is, you know, amazing. And I think, my gosh, being able to speak multiple languages, first of all, I'm so impressed because I've always been bad with languages, as much as I've tried, but just really is important and really useful on for so many different applications. So
Okay.
that's just my idea.
Okay. All right. I guess one thing that I'm thinking of is, let's make it very practical. Like, in about 2 minutes or a minute or two, each one of you, if you can tell us what your day to day is like, right? So if you wake up in a day and, let's say, in your respective functions or roles, what would it look like? So that practically for someone who's listening, they have an idea that, oh, okay, this is what I should expect, or this is how it looks like. Mhm. Wendy, I saw the look.
Okay, well, what I will preface this by is saying that because I work with a small institution,
Mhm.
and because the institution is not only a formalized institution, but it's also working with a private collection, where when you work with a private collector, there's something a lot more, you know, it's a really personal thing. So my responsibilities are really diverse, and I get really into a lot of things. So today, for example, after this talk, I'll be going into the museum because we are in the middle of installing our next exhibition, and one of the paintings in the exhibition is so large that it needs to be taken off of the stretcher, which is the wooden support that the canvas is usually wrapped around, so that the painting itself can be rolled and brought into the rooms. And then, so that was done in our warehouse on Monday by our conservator. And today she's going back into our museum and she's going to stretch that canvas so that we can actually hang it on the wall. And I will be there to oversee that. It gives me a chance to take a really good look at the canvas, to find the back of it really, and you know, and it's a multi-million-dollar painting. Not that everything in the show is at that value. And then later I'll be meeting with, I also sit on the board of a nonprofit arts group that provides sort of embeds local artists in studios in elementary schools, because we don't have dedicated arts instruction in our elementary levels or primary levels. And I sit on the board and I'm meeting with those people, and that will give me a chance to understand what's happening with arts education in my hometown. I'm involved with both at the university level, but for me it was meaningful to also be involved at that junior level. And this is something I really want to emphasize. What I discover when I enter the art world is, through art, I meet so many people from so many diverse backgrounds.
Mhm.
In my career, I have spoken, you know, had wonderful, intense conversations with really broke art students. I also have intense conversations with billionaires who make their money in the most unexpected ways. I used to, when I was a private dealer, I used to have a client whose company made 60% of the gas nozzles in the world. So 6 out of 10 times, if you went to fill up your car's tank at the gas station, you were probably touching a nozzle that his company made. And that made him such a fortune that he could get a massive art collection. So the diversity of the people I got to meet, because we have this one shared interest in art, meant that I learned so much about all kinds of different industries, and that knowledge and education allowed me to not only then look at art and interpret it with, you know, ever more sort of, I think, welcoming and creative ways, but it actually just helped me. Like, if I had a technical question, there was probably somebody I met through art who I can pick up the phone and say, hey, so when it's this kind of material, and it's going to be subjected to this kind of condition, do you have an expert on your staff? Do you have a scientist? Do you have a, you know, like, all kinds of things? And I think that's the thing. Art is the center of all of that. And so for all of you with your diverse backgrounds and knowledge and education, you're adding to that, but you're also going to benefit from meeting everyone else that's been drawn into that room by that art.
Okay. Thank you so much. Mary-Kate, Assad?
Let's see. So a day, it's never the same. I mean, that's the thing. I think that's also very true of all of us.
Yes.
Like working there, it's like never the same. So today, I have been in touch with different clients about the art loans, and so one of the things we have to do every year is look at the artwork that the clients use as collateral for their loans. So I was coordinating some of that, and because we're a global team, one of those conversations is going to happen Monday morning in Taiwan, and right now it's a little challenging because of with lockdowns and obviously still dealing with the pandemic, being able to view artworks that are in, for example, Hong Kong. We do a lot of lending in Asia. So we've been trying to figure out how we're going to do that. Thank God for FaceTime. But the reality is when you value artwork, you really do have to see it in person. Like you don't know how good it is until you see it in person. You can't, a JPEG just doesn't work. So anyway, we do that once a year for all of our loans. So I've been coordinating several of those visits. I also have a call after this talking to a client who's looking to sell a painting. So, I'm going to present him an idea about how we can maximize a sale and what the terms are going to be and how comfortable he'll be with that. So each of my days is like a combination of like working with my different clients. And then like Wendy was saying too, there's also volunteering is a big part of also what I do. And I also serve on a board for curators and have a meeting about that. And so it does, every day is different, I will say, which really, it makes it fun. That keeps it
exciting.
Very exciting. Exactly.
Okay. Mr. Assad, your turn.
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Mary-Kate and Wendy are saying with respect to no 2 days are really the same. So I guess the best way to describe it is I'll tell you how my day was yesterday.
Okay.
Started off with a client call for a $40 million deal. Now, probably like big numbers, but the client's worth $1 billion. So you're just thinking, okay, right? Structuring a transaction with the client. That's how it all started off. Client came back with a few comments, and we had to go back to our approvers just on a few changes that I would recommend. Again, focusing on the two elements. How much am I willing to give? Am I comfortable with 40 million? How am I going to get it back? How is this client going to repay me? Middle of the day, I'd say, before I even had a chance to eat breakfast, but I got an email that basically said, a client's, financials have deteriorated. So I have to work with our risk officers on that with respect to what are we going to do as an institution, because our primary objective as being what we call ourselves as the first line of defense is to protect the bank.
Okay.
We're here to serve our clients, but it's also to protect the bank as well. So what are we going to do in that situation? Last few hours of the day, it was regulators wanted a few things from us. So we have multiple stakeholders in this. Clients, internal stakeholders, regulators. You have to work with every single person in that industry, in the industry of finance, If you're going into something else like private equity, you may not have to deal with so much of that stuff, right? But, there's obviously to this job, it's a lot of working with multiple people, trying to figure out solutions. So if you're very kind of solution orientated, figuring out a solution to any kind of problem, finance isn't rocket science, right? We all try to, every career has their nomenclature, right? And we all try to kind of develop our own type of words for each industry and kind of say like, oh, you don't know these words, you're clearly not an expert in this. But if you translate that into kind of just everyday mainstream language, it's all the terms that all of you have heard before. So,
Okay, awesome. I think we have about 15 minutes left on the clock, but there's one more key thing before we turn it off, we turn it on for the participant to ask any questions that they might have. Let's get into the whole chaos of crypto NFT world, which has been crashing and causing a whole lot of chaos in the world for the past couple of weeks and months. Um, let's take your take on that. Personally, and again, it can be professionally or from your experience, whatsoever the case might be. Do you think crypto and NFTs are here to stay? Is there a future for people who are looking to get new avenues or jobs? Is there a future for them in there? How is that impacting art today? And if you were to go, let's say 10 or 20 years from now, what would you do? With the knowledge that you have today with crypto and NFTs?
Can I just jump in and share my definition of those two terminology?
Yes.
Crypto is a form of currency, like the US dollar, whatever, you know what I mean? And NFT is a technology. Technology is not automatically equal to art, but artists can use technology, whether that's an oil paint, whether that's a video camera, whether that's a piece of carpet, and turn that using the technology, they can create art. And I think there's been a misconception, misunderstanding, particularly in the general public. They think of NFT as some kind of art when they think about when they're talking about art, like it's not, it's just another tool for potentially making art. And you can take any tool and make really bad art with it, and you can take any tool and make really good art with it. So when it comes to whether somebody who wants to invest in an NFT artwork or that kind of thing, that's, you still have to be able to figure out what you think is a good artwork, right? Just because it's made with NFT doesn't exempt it from every other value assessment you might make if it was made with an oil paint.
Interesting. So you have to know art before you can even leverage the NFTs. Basically, that's what you're saying.
You have to know what you're buying. If you go shopping for a new swimsuit, you're going to probably look around for the different styles and the different pricing, the different, it's not like no different than anything else you buy. You don't just blindly go and buy something without having some understanding of what you're looking for, what you prefer, or even what the market's offering and which store is offering. Is one grocery store charging a little more for their pound of grapes than the other one? You probably look at your flyers before you go grocery shopping. So why wouldn't you do the very, very bare minimum due diligence when you're buying art? And certainly NFT art, which is so new that I think a lot of artists do not know what to do with it yet. They're really intrigued, and a lot of them are producing things, but it's like the infancy. So, do I think there can be really good NFT art? Yes. Has much of it been produced? Highly unlikely at this moment.
Okay.
It's a bit of a wild west.
Okay, that's a very interesting take. Mary-Kate?
Yeah, I have to totally agree with Wendy, because I think that, like you're talking about looking forward, I am intrigued, because I think, like Wendy said, artists, it's a material. Like, what are they going to do with it? Like, the NFT, like, media is something so new that, artists don't even know what to do with it. And there are actually several programs that have been created recently that are giving artists these platforms to actually explore it. And I think that like watching those is going to be interesting to see. And different galleries have gotten really involved. Like Pace Gallery is a major gallery that's really had its finger kind of on art and technology for a long time. I think that, also one of the things that has happened here is that NFTs and the market has gotten so intertwined so quickly. What's exciting about it is that, the reality is like the art, the blue chip art world can be very insular, and it's hard to understand, even know how to break into it. And there's all these codes, and they don't tell you prices, and you have to know. It can be really intimidating. And I think one of the draws that the NFT art has created is that it's a very different, almost democratizing kind of platform that anybody can get in. I mean, not anybody. I mean, it also has its nuances, but it offers some elements of it, not all elements, but one element, one line of NFT art really emphasizes community. You know, like you're buying like the board yacht apes, for example, some of you may have heard of. You know, it's like people who are buying that, it's like, you know, you're part of a group. It's like, it's, you know, you can equate it, it's like collectibles, like baseball cards or something. You know, there's like parallels with that. And the artist people, you know, just making these kind of, you know, not particularly like well artistically crafted images, but you know, they're accessible, they're digital. And I think that the market got so excited and there's been some crazy sales. And what we've seen in the last, you know, especially this year, is that it's gone down because I think some of the fluff is like some of the air has gone down. But people are still trying to figure this out. So I am like, I mean, I'm still not totally convinced. I mean, I have not advised anyone to buy NFT art. I'm nowhere near that. We're not taking NFT art as collateral. We have been asked many times. But, you know, the reality is like, there is real money. I mean, like, you know, people, $69 million, that is real money, you know, being traded. That has kind of gone down. We've seen this year in 2022. But I am very curious to see what the artists, and I think in our field, like it always comes back to the artists. Like, what are the artists doing? Like, the artists are going to kind of get us there. Like, what are the artists going to do with this? Like Wendy said, with like, it's like a new version of like oil paint, maybe. Not exactly new, but you know what I mean. It's just another tool, and see what they do. So, so I'm cautiously optimistic that the future holds something interesting.
Interesting. Cautiously optimistic. Assad, what's your take on that?
So the way I kind of view it is that, yes, it is a blockchain is a technology. NFT is kind of a subset of that. Think about electric cars. A lot of people think Tesla was like the first one. It was like 30, 40 years ago, whatever it was, right? It may not happen. I mean, the NFT kind of crypto world may not take off this year, next year, 20 years. Maybe there may be something else that comes up. I mean, the whole crypto and kind of blockchain kind of thesis, you know, rests on kind of speed and kind of other aspects. So when I think of it from a finance standpoint, I think about, again, how much am I willing to lend against an NFT? Again, that market is very new. Mary-Kate probably would be, you know, hard pressed to find an for a piece there if I really pressed on it. And then the other component, again, how am I getting my money back? Will I be able to sell that? Will I be able to get a hold of that to be able to sell it if it was a default by a certain client? I think I could, but you know, there's ways around it. But I mean, that the field is so new. What I would say to people is, don't go chasing the money here. You know, a neighbor of mine, because I work in finance, they think I know everything to do with finance, like across the board, crypto and everything else. And she was asking me, should I invest in Bitcoin? And my answer to her, which I don't think she liked very much, was only invest what you're willing to lose.
Which is very sound advice, yes.
I take that same philosophy when I'm also invested in kind of crypto projects, but it's only kind of on what I'm willing to lose, quite frankly. If I didn't see it again, it wouldn't affect my life, so to speak. So don't go throwing all your money and all your career kind of behind kind of crypto. If you really believe in it, there are multiple firms out there whom are hiring. You know, Coinbase is kind of one of them. You know, they've slowed down. They've announced kind of cuts here and there, but there's a lot of money being poured into this space. But only go into it if you have kind of some real belief in the industry, the way it's kind of growing, and your place in that industry. But always keep in the back of your mind that, yes, it is very new. And like the electric car 30 years ago, it may not be an industry in the next year or so.
Interesting. Thanks for that point of view as well. So I think at this point, we'll just turn it over to the participants. I'm curious to know if you have any questions that you would like to ask of our panelists. This is your chance to ask, and then, you know, get them to actually respond to you as well. Okay.
It's Kweku here. Sorry, my camera is is acting up a little bit, so apologies. Wendy, Mary-Kate, and Assad. No, it's been interesting listening to you all. How like a lot of you fell into your roles, whether by accident or out of curiosity or general interest, to pursue something different. So no, it's been very insightful. So thanks for sharing all that. From what I've learned is that sometimes, you may have a passion to explore other, like career paths or alternatives, but then the financial incentives, at the beginning, because you got to get an entry point, a foot in the door, kind of scenario. May not be very motivating at the beginning. Sad, I heard you, about not always thinking about the money, but then people sort of people think these things through. Sometimes some are very lucky early stage. Some made towards the end of their careers and then all that. So what will be it will be helpful to hear any insightful thoughts on what you think people should bear in mind. Is there a balance between look at the future? Don't think too much, about, all the bills that you might, miss out on, the stress that may cause you, and then all that. Or, it may be that there are clever ways of doing it also. So, yeah, it would be great to hear some insightful thoughts, from you.
Thanks for that, Kweku.
I'm happy to go here first. I guess the point I was trying to make was more in terms of don't go with the first job that just offers you the most money, because from a long-term perspective, it may not be tough, right? So I can tell you that when I started off, I probably wasn't on like the highest salary versus my friends and other people. I can tell you now that's changed, right? So it may not be the best path going down one avenue or whatnot, but when I graduated, I wanted to be a teacher, right? I mean, I wanted to be a math teacher. That was my thing. I love it when I get new analysts into the group or rotational analysts to be able to kind of work with them and kind of teach them a few things. But when you're talking about just from a monetary perspective, I guess, don't think of your career as being just the one avenue. You have to think of it from multiple avenues of investments as well, right? A lot of younger folks, they think of, okay, salary, and that's the only thing that can really come into my bank account. But whenever you get a salary, think of budget, investments, and other aspects, right? Where you can place your money. I mean, a lot of high net worth individuals, they keep reinvesting whatever they get, right? They keep reinvesting into things, creates more value for them, particularly in artwork. I mean, it's just been going up and up across the board. So think of it kind of holistically, right? Your career, whenever you have an interview, there's always this question of, where do you want to be in 5 years? I can tell you, if you backtrace that to what everybody's answer was, where they're going to be in 5 years, nobody is accurate in that answer. There's not a single person who is accurate, right? The max I would tell you to think of is the next couple of years. Always know what you think your next step is, not the next 5 years, in the next couple of years. Wendy talked about a few aspects to getting at the ground level. Yeah, but always think about your next step as well. What are you going to do after that?
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Can I echo that? I think Assad has a really good point in that the best paying position isn't necessarily the best payoff in the long run. So Mary-Kate and I both had the good fortune of starting off with small organizations where we were exposed to so many opportunities. And on some level, I do see potentially taking a slightly lower salary as essentially me paying for that opportunity to not only work with the artist in my situation, but to actually, I was designing our ads in the, which we had an inside cover of a major international art magazine. I was designing the ads. I had no design background. I was working with fabricators and trying to produce these art projects with artists. I was working with collectors. I was working with museums because they wanted to show some of the things that we were producing. That opportunity was worth the fact that I was not making rent. You don't want to not make rent forever, but depending on where you are in your career, like essentially, that trade-off, I would never say don't worry about your bill, like your debt. Like you should be aware of your debt. You should be conscientious about that. You should be responsible about that. But if you have to give up dollars, make sure you're giving it up in exchange for excellent opportunities that will help you ultimately advance faster and open more doors and create more opportunities for you.
Okay, that's really great. So the highest paying job is not necessarily the highest payoff. That's a really good takeaway. Okay, all right. Any more questions? Because I know we're on time, but we have room for one more question if anybody wants to ask. Okay. I guess then I think at this point, I would like to say thank you so much for everybody who took the time to join today. I would really want to extend the next and upcoming ones that I'm planning to have as well to you guys. We're looking at some themes around risk, possibly ESG, and then eventually crypto as well into some of the conversations. So I definitely want to invite you guys to those sessions as well. For those students from NYU, thank you so much for joining. For those that came from different backgrounds as well, thank you so much for joining. And then please share that with your colleagues as well. And then Camila, thank you so much for joining as well. I'm looking forward to working with you as well in the future. And thanks so much, guys and panelists, most of all, for your dedication, for your patience, and then, going through this journey. Thank you so much. So much. Appreciate it. All right.
Thank you, Bessie. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, Carrie.
Hey, Gracie.
So, hi. Oh, wait. I need to turn this off. Hold on.